what we know so far from our reporters' source-based work is that they are going to rebuff or push back strongly against this Russian demand that Ukraine essentially demilitarize. This has been a central war aim that Russia has made clear since the start of its invasion in 2022. And the U.S. is now saying, listen, we want to do this peace deal, and we're not going to let you get away with that. This is going to be something you're going to have to agree to. And then this energy issue, we know energy has been very important to President Trump. So the Zaporizhzhia power plant, a massive, massive power plant in Ukraine that Russia seized during the war, the U.S. is essentially saying you got to give it back. So we now understand the U.S. is going to present these terms of a potential deal to Russia, and we'll see what the answer is.
And how do you think Russia will respond to that? Because the U.S. is demanding this military right force, but will Russia agree to it, you think?
I mean, that's the great question, and that's we're going to learn a lot about the viability of these negotiations. I mean, the Russian idea that Ukraine essentially demilitarized was always seen as an extremely maximalist goal. I mean, it's hard to conceive of the U.S. or any other mediator basically acceding to the idea that a country be left totally demilitarized. I mean, that was something that you saw out of World War II with Japan, but otherwise this has not been repeated in modern history. So it would have been an extremely difficult demand to meet. The U.S. is saying essentially that's not going to fly. And, I think what we'll see is, depending on how Russia responds, we'll have a better sense of whether they see these negotiations as a viable path toward an actual ceasefire, or whether they have no interest in peace and are just going to press ahead with the war. So we should have a strong indication of that in the next few days when President Trump's envoy heads to Moscow.
Nick, is there any sense as to what kind of leverage the U.S. has here on the campaign trail? Candidate Trump at the time was very confident about his ability to get what he termed a good peace deal negotiated quickly. Do we have the leverage to actually do that?
Well, I mean, the U.S. definitely does have some points of leverage. It also has some weaknesses. I mean, the big leverage it has, obviously, for one thing, is the sanctions, the massive sanctions regime that have essentially choked off the Russian economy, separated it from the West. Though Russia has been able to keep its war machine going, the economy is in pretty grim shape. And the U.S. could just keep up with the flow of weapons and support to Ukraine, under the idea that, hey, like Russia, they did this invasion in 2022. They've taken over about a fifth of Ukraine's territory, but they did not topple President Zelensky's government as they had hoped, and Ukraine doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So the U.S. could certainly exercise leverage in those ways. Russia, though, also sees that it has its own leverage. Trump does not want to give Ukraine the amount of military aid that it's gotten so far, and they have made battlefield gains in the last several months. So in some ways, for Russia, there is a continued interest in prolonging this thing and drawing it out in hope that President Trump turns his ire again toward Vladimir Zelensky rather than toward Russia. That whether that's a gamble they're going to be willing to make, though, is another question.